Hey guys, tonight we're huddling together in a drafty, echoing stone dormitory for a sleepover like no other. The sacred, snoring world of medieval monks. Forget sleep paralysis demons. In this abbey, you just have Brother Hubert's feet, 24 wool blankets, and that one guy who won't stop humming psalms in his sleep. Before you drift off, do me a quick favor and like this video and subscribe. But honestly, only if listening to medieval bedtime gossip makes you feel all warm and fuzzy. Drop a comment telling me if you'd survive a single night in a room with 30 grown men who believe deodorant is vanity. Now, dim the lights, fire up your loudest fan for maximum white noise and to ward off the ghosts of incense past, and settle into your comfiest position. Ask yourself, what do monks whisper about after Vespers? Did anyone ever sneak in a midnight snack? Who really got to ring the morning bell? Did medieval monks get pillow fights, or was it more passive-aggressive blanket tug-of-war? Could you find spiritual enlightenment after being poked awake by someone else's bony toe for the third time that night? And, most importantly, how did these guys survive centuries without anyone ever inventing the memory foam mattress? Congratulations. You've just woken up in 1382, under a rough-hewn beam, wrapped in an itchy robe, and surrounded by the holy music of 36 grown men snoring in harmony. You blink awake on a straw mattress squeezed between two fellow monks who take the phrase "closer to God" much too literally. The dorm is an echo chamber of hymn fragments, fart clouds, and the soft, contemplative snores of men who haven't slept alone since childhood. Privacy is a concept lost to time, dust, and the highly watchful abbot. If you're picturing a sleek, minimalist retreat, flush with Scandinavian beds and chamomile-scented candles, banish the thought. This dormitory is a timbered colossus, a single, cavernous room lined wall to wall with beds like dominoes trembling at the first sign of a cough. Walls, when they exist, are mainly for structural support, not separateness. Curtains, only if you count the occasional spider web. Monastic life is an exercise in togetherness, carried to its logical and oftentimes smelly extreme. This is not the kind of sleepover where secrets are whispered under blankets by candlelight. Here, secrets don't survive the night. The communal sleeping arrangement was carefully designed with your eternal soul in mind. After all, the devil, as every abbot will remind you, makes work for idle hands and too much privacy. Through the night, each rustle and sigh serves as a stern reminder. In this world, you are never truly alone, not even with your own thoughts. If you're a monk, your deepest confidant is not your pillow, but the guy 3 breaths away who talks in his sleep about cabbage. The choreography of bedtime is a spiritual spectacle in itself. The call to slumber comes early when the outside world is still busy finishing dinner. At the first clang of the bell, a dozen habits shuffle for position, each monk carrying as few possessions as possible. Because with this many witnesses, who needs a lock? You roll out your mat, slide beneath a coarse blanket, and brace yourself for the nightly serenade of sinuses and second-hand psalm recitations. If you're lucky, Brother Aloysius will remember to remove his boots this time. Personal space, in the monastic vernacular, is what you create in your mind's eye. Monks master the art of withdrawing inwards while their bodies are held hostage in a dorm that tests the capacity of the human spirit for coexistence. There's no slouching into your own bubble, no hiding under sheets with a contraband book. Every movement is visible, every sigh another verse in the orchestra. Stillness and silence are achieved not despite the crowd, but because of it. A skill finely honed by necessity and mutual exhaustion. Perhaps the only private moment is in the earliest part of the morning, before the first bell, when even the most zealous are momentarily defeated by their dreams. You might briefly forget where or who you are, until the whiff of incense and feet reminds you you're still in the company of the devout and possibly a few snoring saints. Then, duty taps you on the shoulder and you shuffle to prayers with every hair in place. Because who wants to give the abbot more to pray about? Yet, within this forced fraternity is an unspoken solidarity. Painfully close quarters breed a sense of kinship that outlasts the chills and the whiffs, and the midnight confessions whispered through the darkness. You know the men beside you, not just by their habits, but by the rhythm of their breathing, the pitch of their snores, the dreams you've overheard and sometimes envied. In the grand monastic dormitory, you are more than a solitary seeker. You are a node in a network, like it or not. And so you slip back into sleep, forging spiritual muscles in a place where privacy is a legend. Snores are communal prayers, and your midnight secrets are never truly your own. Welcome to the world's least private sleepover. Meet your bed, a handsome rectangle of straw that prickles, crinkles, and occasionally harbours a beetle or two. No feather pillows, no fitted sheets, just whatever your abbey can stuff into a burlap sack. Forget counting sheep. Tonight, you'll be counting how many times you get poked by your own mattress. Sleeping arrangements in the medieval monastery are, let's say, humbling. The goal wasn't comfort, it was endurance, discipline, and, if you were really lucky, the gradual cultivation of detachment from worldly pleasure. The monks believed that soft beds led to soft morals. In theory, the humbler your sleeping situation, the closer to God you'd get by sunrise. In practice, you got a close encounter with every bump in the stone floor and every mysterious itch on your skin. Picture yourself shuffling into the dormitory after a chilly evening of prayer. There's no private chamber, just a drafty hall packed with your cloaked brethren, all lined up like overstuffed burritos in burlap shells. Don't expect soothing bedtime talk. Silence after dark was typically part of the deal. If you're the type who needs a gentle podcast to drift off, tough luck. Tonight's soundtrack is the symphony of straw rustling, wheezing snores, the rare nocturnal cough, and the gentle thud of someone shifting to avoid a particularly aggressive stork poking their ribs. And then there's the cold. The stone beneath you retains precisely none of the day's warmth. Winter transforms the dormitory into a sort of penitential icebox. Monks might wrap their cowls tighter and burrow a little deeper, but extra blankets, only sometimes, depending on the generosity of your order or the sharpness of the bishop's purse strings. Waking up shivering with stiff fingers and a numb nose was common and, according to some, good for the soul. Makes you appreciate the moments of warmth you do get, like the sunbeam that creeps in just after lauds, bathing your face in fleeting gold before you trudge off to morning tasks. But if the straw was tough, consider the stone. In stricter or poorer abbeys, the option to sleep straight on the cold floor wasn't out of the question. No mattress at all, just a thin cloth between you and the medieval equivalent of a chiropractor's nightmare. Imagine dawn arriving and having to unfold yourself, joint by joint, as if you'd spent the night locked in a particularly cruel yoga pose. This wasn't just a test of spiritual mettle. It was a battle between willpower and vertebrae. Yet sometimes, mid-toss or while prying a pebble from under your shoulder blade, true clarity would strike. As discomfort pulled your mind from daydreams and drowsiness, you remembered your vow of poverty, your dedication to a cause bigger than yourself, all the reasons you traded soft beds for spiritual rigor. Maybe you stumbled on a kind of enlightenment in your sleeplessness, or at the very least, Some excellent material for tomorrow's internal monologue on hardship and humility. By sunrise, you might not be well rested, but you'd be, momentarily, well aware of the body you lived in and the community you belonged to. You'd stretch, scratch, and rise alongside 50 freezing companions, united in your collective discomfort. There's a certain strange camaraderie and mutual misery, a knowledge that every ache and every straw in your cassock is an unspoken thread tying your life to those beside you. So, the next time you fluff your pillow or tug your comforter tighter, remember the monks and their straw mattresses. The mattresses were prickly, the stones were cold, but the lessons learned in the darkness about discipline, belonging, and the surprising resilience of the human back have outlasted every last beetle. There's one thick, scratchy communal blanket. 3 monks, 1 blanket. Who gets the most coverage? Prepare for the sacred rite of midnight negotiations, subtle tugs, and, if you're lucky, maybe a corner to yourself before Brother Bernard steals it back. This is not merely a practical matter. It's practically a monastic microeconomy, except the currency is warmth and negotiating skills honed by countless shivering nights. The blanket, which began its life as some kind of coarse brown wool, has over the years acquired a mythology of its own. The older monks whisper that it was brought from the mountains by St. Hubert himself, though more recent evidence suggests it was a bulk purchase from a particularly thrifty prior in the 1950s. Either way, tonight, it's your only defense against the swirling medieval chill that slips through ancient stone walls and somehow finds your toes, no matter what position you sleep in. There's an almost ceremonial rhythm to the evening. Brother Bernard, the lightest sleeper, claims the middle by virtue of seniority. He's only been here a year more than anyone else, but that's enough. To his right, Brother Thomas adopts a tactical approach, always draping an arm over the edge as if to guard his territory. You, the novice, or perhaps just slow to the game, begin your night with ample coverage, but inevitably find yourself clinging to a narrow, contested strip as the hours wear on. Midnight arrives, and the sacred rite commences. First comes the shift. One monk turns, carefully, with the apparent innocence of a man seeking comfort. As the blanket lifts, a rush of cold air fills the void. Instinctively, hands reach, the cover is pulled, and the balance shifts. If you're lucky, the redistribution is generous. If you're not, Brother Bernard has already assumed the blanket Byzantine maneuver, wrapping the wool about him like a burrito, leaving scraps for the rest. But underneath this nightly skirmish lies an unspoken code. No one voices complaint, at least not in the moment. Here, the ancient art of blanket diplomacy sets in. A look, a suppressed sigh, an expertly timed roll to reclaim lost inches. Should negotiations fail, one might employ the subtle foot push, inching the blanket your way, with movements so gradual they blur the line between intention and sleepwalking. It's a quiet symphony of maneuver and counter-move, all beneath the solemn hush of wind whistling through monastic rafters. What's truly astonishing is just how universal these ritualized struggles seem. Across centuries and continents, monastic communities, be they high in the Himalayas or nestled in Irish valleys, bond over this peculiar, half-asleep sport. Stories abound. Brother Thomas, ever the pragmatist, swears his predecessor once tied the blanket to his belt to secure his claim. The gambit resulted in a midnight tumble that woke the abbot and ushered in the no fastenings decree, still posted on the dormitory wall. Yet, by morning, any grumbles are replaced by camaraderie. The chill still lingers in your bones, but so does the memory of the collective ordeal. Somehow, there's an odd comfort in the communal suffering. A reminder that even as you're jostling over wool, something quietly unites you. a shared yearning for warmth, a laugh about Brother Bernard's notorious burrito technique, a nod of respect to last night's most creative maneuver. And as the first rays of dawn pierce the dormitory's frosted window, the blanket, rumpled and trailing threads, becomes just another relic of your shared story. Coffee is poured, work begins, and the blanket, temporarily forgotten, readies itself for the next sacred round. A nightly theatre of negotiation, humility, and, if you're lucky, a little more coverage than yesterday. Those who have not experienced the blanket tug-of-war might imagine it as a simple nuisance, nothing more than cold feet or a restless night. But to those who have, it stands as a badge of initiation, a rite that tempers not just the body, but the bonds between unlikely companions, stitched together for a few hours by shared discomfort and the endless hope of a warmer tomorrow. Did you think silence was holy? Not here. The monk on your left hums Gregorian chants in his sleep. The one on your right has a snore like thunder rolling over cobblestones. Every creak in the rafters is a new opportunity to ponder your mortality and someone's digestion. What you expect when you slip beneath your thin monastery blanket is the hush of centuries, a tranquil silence woven with a quiet sense of purpose. What you get is an unpredictable symphony of human existence, a holy cacophony that refuses to fade, however much your sleep-starved body pleads for mercy. At first, you try to ignore it. Eyes squeeze shut. You will your mind to focus on divine peace. But the universe has other plans. Instead, you sink into the waves of nocturnal discord, every sound a punctuation mark in the manuscript of the night. It's not just the monks. The building itself wants its presence known. There's the singular groan of a floorboard as someone, somewhere, finds reason to shuffle to the bathroom at 2 a.m. The wind rattles ancient windows. A bell tolls in the distance, out of time and tune, its schedule governed not by clocks, but apparently by the whims of local wildlife. Somewhere above, an unidentifiable critter. Is it a mouse? An angel? Both. Skirls in the eaves. You try meditating on patience. You end up meditating on cheese. Daytime conversations about tranquility and achieving inner stillness start to take on a dark comedic irony. How do these seasoned monks, with lives honed by routine and ritual, snooze serenely amid this nightly racket? Perhaps it is their inner discipline, the product of years spent tuning out both external distractions and the endless chattering of their own minds. Or perhaps, perhaps, they are the cause. There's an art to monastic snoring, sometimes syncopated, sometimes harmonious, but always relentless. Some nights, the sounds combine to produce a kind of midnight liturgy. A monk shifts in his cot, producing a percussive thump. From across the dormitory, a soft chanting arises, fragmented, unintelligible, floating through the darkness like incense. Another chorus, a bleary, echoing call and response as someone grumbles, "Shh," only to be answered by an even louder snore. If by chance you find yourself awake, witness to this sacred soundscape, you're in distinguished company. Saints have suffered worse, surely. And in time, something curious happens. The sounds cease being interruptions and become strange companions. You begin to assign characters to each snore. One's the steady bass, another's a feathery soprano, another falls somewhere between a train whistle and a small avalanche. The chanting, once disorienting, becomes a lullaby. You realize the stillness you sought isn't an absence of sound, but a surrender to the rhythm of communal sleeping, a reminder that you're part of something ancient and collective. Of course, the sacred soundscape carries rules of its own. Earplugs are frowned upon, suffering is character building, or so you're told. A whispered joke circulates among the novices. If you can sleep here, you can sleep anywhere. It's both a boast and a challenge. Every morning you meet bleary-eyed brothers over communal porridge and the muttered acknowledgements. Rough night, brother? Did you catch the midnight motet? Form the secret handshake of initiation. By the end of your first week, you've learned to distinguish the cries of distant owls from Brother Joseph's operatic teeth grinding. You've surrendered to the opera of sleep, a nightly reminder that the search for transcendence is rarely quiet. If you're lucky, one night the ordinary will shift, snoring, chanting, footsteps, all blending into a strange, shared music. And maybe, just as sleep finally arrives, you'll understand. Sacred isn't always silent. Sometimes it's the noise, the weird, joyful chorus that truly connects us all. At the witching hour, someone always sits up to mutter a prayer, recite a proverb from memory, or lecture on humility. You pretend to sleep as Brother Theobald gives a full, whisper-level homily to the shadows. Cancel your plans for REM sleep. It always starts the same way. A soft creak of wooden bed springs and a shuffle of bare feet on cold stone. The one who rises is never the same twice in a row, as if the moonlight draws lots among the restless. One night, it's Sister Mariam recounting a parable about envy. The next, Brother Otto recalling the many stages of repentance, his voice the slow turning of a cracked door. The effect is less soothing lullaby, more ancient broadcast, devotional radio, played at a volume only the guilty and the insomniac can discern. You learn quickly that resistance is futile. Sigh, roll over, and you're bound to catch a quote about pride before fall. Plug your ears, and an entire treatise on patience will leak through the cracks between your fingers. On these nights, the dormitory is awash in a kind of holy static. The click of rosary beads, a low Latin murmur, the occasional amen echoing like the final word in an unfinished argument. Every utterance seems carefully aimed at whatever you regret most about your day. Most of these midnight orators style themselves as reluctant vessels. I couldn't sleep, so I thought to meditate, they say, already halfway into a 10-minute discourse on the dangers of sloth. They drift up and down the aisle, a silhouette with a mission, their voice haloed by shadows, and a reverence only amplified by exhaustion. Sometimes it's sincere. Other times, it's a thinly veiled rebuke disguised as communal wisdom. The distinction you'll learn hardly matters. Humility is humility, whether you took it as medicine or had it forced down at lights out. Every so often, a burst of laughter will shatter the solemnity, a snort from the bed in the far corner, a groan as someone turns beneath their scratchy blanket. A novice whispers, "Preach with the sun, not the moon," and there's a brief, conspiratorial giggle. These are the cracks in the facade, reminders that reverence and rebellion share a bunk. Still, no one objects for long. To protest is to invite a secondary, more personal sermon. The best defense is feigned slumber and the steady, convenient stillness of someone who looks deep in REM, even as a proverb about the dangers of idleness hands hovers above your pillow like a concerned ghost. Strangely, some nights, you almost welcome these spiritual monologues. You come to appreciate the cadence, the shiver of candlelight on stone, the low hum of a voice cutting through the dark. When the fears and doubts of the day feel especially heavy, an old hymn at midnight can serve as a kind of salve. For a moment, the words are not a benediction or a remonstrance, but a reminder. You're not the only one here waiting for morning. Other nights, the sermons go unanswered. A lesson on gratitude fizzles as its intended audience snores in defiance. Your own thoughts float up, mingling with the sermon's theme. Did you speak too sharply to Brother Lyle at dinner? Did you offer help where you ought to have asked for it? In the dark, the lines between preachy and profound blur, and you suspect that these midnight meditations are not altogether unwelcome, even when they leave you sleepless. So, you lie there, half listening, half dreaming, caught between the weight of last night's advice and tomorrow's chores. As the final whisper fades, dawn creeps in around the window ledge. Silence returns, heavy and shared. No one speaks of what was said, or which regrets kept them staring up at the long, patient dark. But for a moment, just as the light turns the stone golden, you think you understand. This is the secret currency of the cloister, traded in the quiet hours when even the devout would rather be fast asleep. Without alarm clocks, monks rely on a centuries-old system, foot pokes. A sharp toe to the calf means stop snoring. A subtle nudge signals time for matins. Try to master the difference, or you'll end up rising for morning prayers at 2 a.m. by accident. Again. It's easy to assume that monastic silence means an absence of communication. But spend one night in a communal dormitory and you'll discover an entire covert language conducted below blanket level. The silence may be golden, but the feet are chatty. Novices, at first, miss the cues entirely. The first week, you might leap out of bed at every stir, convinced the monastery is under attack, only to realize your bunkmate just wanted you to roll over and stop shaking the rafters with your impression of a freight train. Soon, however, you begin to decipher the code. There's the gentle billiard ball tap, meant to reassure a fellow monk who's clearly enduring a nightmare about unfinished psalms. The persistent wiggle, reserved for those on bathroom duty. And of course, the legendary double tap and hold, the universal sign for "you took my blanket, give it back." Each monk develops their own signature move, handed down like a family crest. Brother Ignatius, for example, employs a martial arts precision, a single well-placed poke that conveys both urgency and respect. Brother Francis, on the other hand, opts for stealth, using the feather nudge, which, at first, I confused for a mouse running across my foot. Both methods are effective, but you will learn quickly which one leaves bruises and which just tingles. The etiquette of foot poking is a serious matter. Well, as serious as you can be while half asleep and wearing mismatched woolen socks. Poke too hard and you'll startle half the dormitory awake, causing a domino effect of confusion, grumbling, and, inevitably, someone banging their head on a wooden bedpost. Poke too gently and your intended target will sleep on, blissfully snoring through matins, leaving you to awkwardly cover for them as everyone else files into the choir stalls. Sometimes, the fear of a misinterpreted poke is enough to keep you hyper-alert all night. I once spent a full hour debating if the tiny tap on my shin really meant "get up," or if Brother Thomas was just having an enthusiastic dream about shepherding invisible goats. Spoiler, it was the goats. And yes, there are mistakes, grand and small. Few things are more humbling than dressing in the dark, stumbling into the chapel an hour early, and realizing that the secret signal you thought you received was just a stray twitch, or even worse, sleeping through an entire office because you snoozed right past the matins nudge, an error that usually earns you an extra foot poke the next night, just for good measure. Yet over time, something wonderful happens. The secret language of foot pokes becomes a nightly liturgy of its own, a wordless expression of shared life, routine, care, and yes, gentle exasperation. You become attuned not only to the rhythms of prayer, but also to the rhythms of those around you. Every nudge is a reminder that even in silence, you are surrounded, sometimes quite literally, by your fellow travelers on this monastic adventure. In the end, the footpoke is more than a quirky relic. It's a nightly act of camaraderie, a reminder that the road to holiness is paved with awkward, half-awake moments, and that sometimes the best way to say "I care" is with a carefully calibrated jab to the calf. Around midnight, the bells toll. Matins, the first of many daily prayers, drags everyone upright in the dark. You stumble, half blind, toward the chapel, wondering if God truly appreciates prayers muttered through yawns and bedhead. The tolling bells aren't just a gentle nudge. Their insistent clang slices through sleep like a medieval iPhone alarm. No snooze option allowed. For the monks, this ritual isn't just discipline. It's identity. But for anyone unaccustomed, it's disorienting. Imagine the cold stone floors biting at your bare feet as you shuffle out of the warmth of your bed or straw mat. You huddle your habit closer, following the shuffling procession toward the only source of light, flickering candle flames lining the hallway to the chapel. Inside, the air feels thick with centuries of whispered devotion. The stone walls echoing back the low drone of psalms and sleepy voices. The community gathers in silence, save for the rustle of robes and the clearing of throats. In many monasteries, the chapel itself is barely heated, just enough to stave off frostbite. If you've ever wondered whether cold toes foster holiness, monks could give you an honest answer. Matins marks a dividing line in the night, neither yesterday nor today, but a liminal space, hovering in the small hours. There's something otherworldly about these minutes, when the rest of the world lies still and monastic life carries on in its prescribed rhythm. It's less about eloquence, more about showing up, together, united by purpose, if not by perkiness. It's hard not to marvel at the sheer persistence of this practice. Matins was hardwired into the monastic day from the earliest times. Back then, clocks were rare, so monks relied on human wake-up calls, usually the youngest novices, or the bellow of a handbell. The entire community was roused at once. A communal experience, a shared struggle. If you're picturing monks gliding like ghosts through the corridors, think again. There's groaning, there's shuffling, and, yes, sometimes the ancient equivalent of muttered complaints. But for many, Matins is where the struggle turns sacred. Beneath the fatigue, something powerful happens. The half-conscious singing becomes a reminder. These people are not, or not just, individuals, but the heartbeat of a community, pulsing through darkness with their prayers and presence, in a world of individual alarms and solitary wake-ups. There's a strange comfort in knowing you rise and worship as one, knit together by ancient tradition. Of course, this ritual didn't happen in isolation. Early monastic rules, like the rule of St. Benedict, spelled out exactly how this middle-of-the-night prayer should unfold. Who led, what was sung, even how many psalms were chanted. The whole framework was built upon the belief that giving God the first fruits of each day, even when that meant dragging oneself out of bed at midnight, was an act of devotion, sacrifice, and discipline. The schedule was relentless. After matins, often an hour or more, depending on the season and specific tradition, there might be a brief chance to rest before the next prayer, Lauds, at daybreak. The result? A group perpetually balancing on the edge of exhaustion and spiritual resolve, caffeine replaced by cold air and communal purpose. For the outsider, the midnight matin seems otherworldly, perhaps even extreme. And yet, at its core, it aims to remind each person that faith is rooted not only in grand gestures, but in the daily, difficult, half-awake willingness to show up. The bells at midnight are not just an alarm, but an invitation, through the haze of sleep, through communal, bleary eyes, to be part of something bigger than oneself, together in the dark for the dawn to come. That first step out of bed, It's like being baptized by icy stone. Your feet slap the freezing floor, waking up the only parts of you that dared fall asleep. Bath slippers, please. We're men of the cloth and chronic foot fungus. Every monk in the dormitory knows the floor's secret. It always feels colder than the air, an unspoken discipline that seeps up through your arches and into your soul. The stone flags are unforgiving, chiseling away any memory of warmth from your straw mattress, instantly reminding you that here, comfort is negotiable. At this hour, just after the bell's first groan, you're not yet awake, but the stone is, and the stone does not care whether you've spent the night in prayer or in the grip of a snoring neighbour's elbow. It's a brutal little ritual. Shoes aren't permitted with your nightclothes. For centuries, the rule has stood. Humility and discipline begin with the feet. After all, if the Lord washed feet, surely we can offer ours to the mercy of medieval flooring. The rule is simple: bare feet, bare souls. The result? A monkhood unified not just by faith, but by an unspoken daily contest. Who can make it to the lavabo without yelping? If you stub your toe, you keep it to yourself. That's pride talking, or worse, heresy. In the dead of winter, some try the old tricks, hopping from foot to foot, tiptoeing along the seams, or memorizing the warmest path by moonlight. Veterans sometimes stuff their feet under whatever rags they can find briefly before braving the corridor, a fleeting luxury. Occasionally, a novice gets caught trying to sneak an extra scrap of blanket out for little floor padding. Punishment is swift, but subtle. He'll be assigned to stone scrubbing later that week, ensuring his feet get extra acquainted with the basilica's most glacial surface. As consciousness crawls its way in, you start to notice the other sounds. The slap of feet, the soft curses muttered in Latin, the shared groans. A symphony of discomfort echoing off the arched ceiling. Someone always risks a joke, whispered, "At least the rats have the decency to stay off the cold bits." Laughter is quiet, desperate not to wake the prior or invite further penance. By the time you reach the washing basin, your feet are flushed red, somewhere between numbness and outright rebellion. Outside, the sun hasn't even threatened to rise yet, but already you've endured your first ordeal. The medieval monk's day isn't measured in hours or prayers. It's marked by thresholds of pain and the resilience to meet them. And all of this before a single syllable of matins has been sung. Each brother lines up for ablutions, shivering as his feet meet the damp stones beneath the lavabo. Grim faces hide a shared satisfaction. We have survived another round with the Abbey's most formidable adversary. The day can only go up from here. Maybe you'll see the humour in it later. At mealtime, when you compare blisters, or after compline, when the fire's warmth calls your thoughts back to that first punishing contact with the stones. But for now, with every numb footstep, you're reminded of the medieval paradox. Salvation is hard, and sanctity is cold, especially at 4 a.m., especially on stone. If the world outside has carpets and firewood and sheep's wool slippers, so what? Here, the path to holiness is paved in the most unyielding granite the monastery can muster. And tomorrow, the stones will wait, chilling, ready to greet you, and every bleary monk who answers the bell's call. Let me know if you want anything adjusted or the structure modified. A quick splash of icy water from the basin, enough to keep up appearances, but not enough to frighten the germs. Unwashed robes and shared sandals create a bouquet you'll never forget. You start to miss your junior high gym locker room. Welcome to communal hygiene, the spiritual sibling to communal living, and the ancient world's answer to the question, how close is too close? You may think you know what personal space means, but in this universe, personal space is both a luxury and, perhaps, a hallucination. The basin is everyone's basin, the towel is everyone's towel, and if someone sneezes, you're all getting blessed. Morning rituals become their own form of group theatre. Think synchronized swimming, but with less water and even less coordination. Awkward exchanges ensue. Elbows nudge past hands. Someone's foot finds a puddle that you pray is water. And there is always, without fail, that one person who believes soap is an expensive vice. The olfactory cocktail of the day consists of last night's garlic, damp wool, and the distant hope of lavender. Somewhere, a frustrated mother could be heard shouting, "Were you raised in a barn?" Only to realize that, yes, technically, some of them were. One can imagine the authorities sitting around a table drafting the rulebook of communal purity. Herein shalt thou rinse, but doth not dawdle, nor shalt thou covet thy neighbour's sandal, nor doth thou question the source of the brown stain on the bench. Hygiene is a loose concept when water is rationed and hot water assumes the status of myth, like dragons or a day without chanting. If you're lucky, the water's only cold. If you're unlucky, it's green. Of course, there are rules, even if they're mostly unwritten. Never criticise Brother Paul's unique approach to foot care. Don't remark on Sister Agnes's collection of mysterious ointments. And above all, do not, under any circumstances, leave your only clean towel unattended. Towels are like gold in this economy, and seeing one go missing can be the social equivalent of an international incident. After all, in a place where candour is mandatory, but deodorant is an endangered species, hygiene theft is as grave as heresy. The psychological gymnastics required to ignore your neighbour's toe fungus, or the mysterious wet spot now seeping through your only dry sock, is immense. Advanced practitioners learn to master 1,000-yard stare, their gaze fixed intently at a point on the wall where nothing, and I do mean nothing, actually happens. Small talk is both encouraged and dangerous. Nice day for a rinse, isn't it? Can quickly escalate to impromptu group therapy about the state of the drains. Yet, within this fragrant mingling of humanity, some unexpected virtues emerge. There's a peculiar kind of camaraderie in communal discomfort, a recognition that if rank socks and unidentifiable foot scrapes are everyone's problem, they somehow become nobody's problem. Stoicism thrives. Humour blossoms. Dark, perhaps, but humour nonetheless. And bonds are forged, sometimes literally if someone's hair ointment solidifies in the cold. Eventually, you find yourself adapting. You devise strategies. Arrive early for a chance at the least questionable towel. Memorize which tap produces the least murky water and cultivate the art of rapid self-cleansing, a ballet of speed and efficiency. You learn to savour incremental victories. Today, the sandals don't squelch. Tomorrow, you'll aim for them not to stick. When visitors ask how one endures such communal rituals, you begin to understand. The real cleansing is less about the body and more about the ego. Here, silk masks and social status are all rinsed away, or at least lightly dabbed at with a shared rag. This is democratic dirt, a great leveller, and if you listen closely above the chorus of nervous laughter, someone, somewhere, always says, "Well, at least we're all in it together." And it's true, because here, in the basilica of basin and bench, no one sits too close. Not for want of warmth, but out of a profound and practical respect for the limits of even the most generous monastic charity. Sure, gluttony is a sin, but so is starving at 3 a.m. In the dark, someone always sneaks a bite of bread, or tries. Beware, there's always a brother who will tattletale in exchange for your next slice of rye. These midnight escapades would begin with the tiniest creak, a mat by the door, a step on the cool stone floor. It was a calculated risk, the prospect of capture by the night watchman versus the reward of a stale crust of rye. For each of us, the pull of hunger was nearly as strong as the call to morning prayer. The kitchen, with its locked pantry and storeroom that smelled faintly of onions and apples, became enemy territory under a siege of silence. Stealth, of course, was in short supply. There is a reason no one hymns an ode to teenage subtlety. Inevitably, a spoon clatters, or the old wooden door gives a signature groan. Stifled laughter hovers at the edge of disaster. One oversized robe sleeve gets dipped in the honey pot, and Brother Pascal, sworn to austerity, can no longer claim innocence as he wipes the evidence on his habit. In the monastery, every taste is forbidden fruit. If you happen to witness these heists, sometimes half the dormitory holding its collective breath just to see who'd return victorious, you might have noticed the rules of engagement. First, the bread is community property, but whoever touches it last is the presumed culprit. Second, the fastest not only gets the biggest slice, but must offer a crumb in tribute to the sharpest tattletale. Insurance, really, against tomorrow's confessions. There was, always, someone lurking in the half-dark, more beguiling than the rest, eyes glinting with anticipation. Was it hunger? Or the thrill of getting away with something when all else is forbidden? To be caught was humiliation. To be the one who tattled on his brothers. That brought an odd sort of power, an older currency than bread, leverage. Simple bribes kept secrets for a while, and the next day's breadline would see unlikely alliances, subtle exchanges, and knowing nods. The exchange was rarely verbal. We learned, over loaves and leftovers, the art of negotiation. A slightly larger bowl of porridge traded for silence, a second helping of soup quietly placed beside a conspirator's bowl. Sometimes, a smile at morning prayers revealed the perpetrator more than any crumbs left behind. And yet, beneath the sneaking and the bargaining, lived an unspoken sense of solidarity. We snuck that bread, yes, but not out of greed. We were adolescent monks, bound by ritual but still tethered to bodies that grew restless and hungry in the night. The breaking of bread between forbidden hours became, paradoxically, both a small rebellion and a reaffirmation of brotherhood. Even the sternest abbot, catching one of us, might pause, remembering his own days of secret nibbles, before reducing the sentence to 3 days of kitchen duty. Sometimes, right before dawn, when the kitchen was still, and the last crumb gone, the one who got away with the midnight prize would leave a note etched in flour on the tabletop. Blessed are the hungry, for they shall be satisfied. No one ever confessed to writing it. But we'd all smile, a little, at early breakfast, licking our lips and glancing sideways to see who would dare the next night's quest. Because in the end, that midnight snack was less about filling a stomach and more about tasting freedom, mischief, and a bond that went deeper than discipline. There's not a monastery in the world where the night is wholly silent, or where brotherly love doesn't, sometimes, look like splitting a stolen piece of rye. Let me know if you'd like further adjustment to match any specific nuances from your transcripts. Wake up shouting about running from a giant cheese wheel. Here, that's a discussion topic. Did Saint Benedict ever interpret dreams about being chased by chickens? Tune in after Lord's for the most confused biblical analysis you've ever heard. Welcome to the sacred hour of communal dream analysis, where the boundaries between the unconscious mind and medieval theology blur more enthusiastically than wine at the feast of St. Lawrence. Gather round, sleepwalkers and insomniacs alike, as abbot, novices, and the lone, ever-watchful librarian shuffle into the cloister, not for prayer, but to recount the night's most unhinged adventures in REM sleep. What does it mean when you dream of the Holy Grail, only to discover it's just a chipped mug from the monastery kitchen? Is there, perhaps, profound insight in the sudden appearance of 3 ducks tap dancing across the Sea of Galilee during your subconscious wanderings? Or is it merely the cheese at Compline coming home to roost? The rules are simple. Each brother gets 5 minutes to present their latest dream, while the others nod solemnly, or at least attempt to conceal their grins behind their cowls. The abbot, ever the gentle shepherd of wayward flocks and fractured attention spans, begins with his dream. I was chased across a field by a legion of cherubs armed with knitting needles. The scriptorium erupts in theological debate. Are knitting needles a metaphor for the weaving of fate? Or is it simply that Brother Aelred failed to wrap up his needlework before Vespers? Scripture is consulted, as is the commentary of St. Hildegard, although her treatise is suspiciously silent on the subject of weaponized baby angels. It is agreed, finally, that cherubs are not to be mocked, and that the abbot should perhaps lay off the honey cakes after sext. But don't be fooled. Beneath the laughter lurks sincerity. Communal dream analysis serves, as all things eventually do in monastic life, a double purpose. First, it's a rare sanctioned moment of levity, an agreed upon time to let loose after the rigour of matins and the silent march of the hours. Second, it's a training ground for allegory, the monks, bread and butter. To interpret dreams is to practice the hermeneutical arts. What does the surging flood mean? The stairway made of eels? Did the appearance of the prior riding a donkey into Jerusalem portend spiritual promotion or just indigestion? The line between revelation and absurdity is wavy and, much like the wine cellar key, constantly misplaced. The true joy comes not in finding answers, but in the argument itself. No topic is too outlandish for citation or speculation. Last summer's infamously persistent dream about singing carrots led to a heated debate on whether vegetables possess souls, which lasted longer than Lent and required at least one letter to the bishop for clarification. Undaunted, the brethren pressed on. Is it impious to dream of saints in drag? Does a dream in Latin carry more weight than one in Old Norman? As it turns out, the bishop responded only with a short note, asking them to please stop sending their dreams and to focus on the plague, which the brothers dutifully misinterpreted as a challenge for more creative dream content next year. Yet, for all the frivolity, these sessions thread the community together, not just through shared laughter, but through the willingness to admit, before God and one another, that the human soul is as unruly at night as it is ambitious by day. In these candlelit gatherings, dreams become confession, speculation, even prophecy, lightly seasoned with psalms and a healthy dose of irony. So the next time you wake in a cold sweat, certain you've deciphered the apocalypse through your vision of Benedictine hedgehogs leading a hymn, come quietly to the cloister at dawn. Someone will have brought biscuits, the abbot will have questions, and you will, inevitably, feel right at home. Everyone's pretending to pray, but Brother Oswin is definitely asleep with his eyes open. Learn the ancient skill of head bobbing in rhythm, fooling even the abbot, unless you snore through the Magnificat. There's an unspoken code among novices. Morning prayers are less about devotion and more about survival. Sleep, after all, doesn't just surrender because you rang a bell at 5 a.m. The real test of monastic discipline, balancing spiritual alertness with mental drift while a Gregorian chant croons you into the arms of Morpheus. Some argue that feigning wakefulness during lauds is a noble art, requiring finesse, subtlety, and a lifetime of effort. Others insist it's a science, best, mastered through empirical trial and many errors. Let's take Brother Oswin, legendary among us for his serene, glassy-eyed stare. How does he do it? Is it intentional? Has he tapped into some mystical trance, or is he simply so at peace that not even the Psalms can stir him? Each morning, he becomes our unspoken role model, blending just enough movement, a discreet nod, a reverent murmur, to maintain plausible deniability. It's a mastery built on consistency. Find your rhythm. Synchronize your head bobs with the choir's rise and fall. And above all, never break the flow, unless you want the abbot's eyebrows arching your way. But let's not forget the hazards. The main one is, of course, the snore. Prayers are punctuated by amens and the Magnificat, but an untimely snort, grunt, or nasal exhale will summon instant judgment. Woe to the novice who lets his chin collapse mid-psalm. There are tales, half warning, half legend, of monks who snored so loudly that even the holy relics rattled in their reliquaries. If you're caught, you'll earn more than just embarrassment. There's a high likelihood of being assigned extra penance, or worse, having to explain yourself in front of the whole refectory at breakfast. The mechanics of the perfect prayer nap involve several variables. Seating position is critical. Too far in the back, and you risk being used as an example. Too far forward, and you're directly in the abbot's line of sight. The ideal is somewhere in the middle, camouflaged by taller brethren, but still able to see the altar for cues. Hands should be folded, elbows tucked in, posture upright but relaxed. Your breathing, slow and steady. The closer to the rhythm of the chant, the better. The goal is not to sleep exactly, but to attain a state of restful semi-consciousness that whispers contemplative ecstasy, rather than exhausted peasant. Camaraderie among nappers is key to collective survival. You aren't alone in this sacred struggle. Discreet signals, taps on the hymn book, a sharp elbow to the ribs, keep everyone on track when eyelids start to droop. A raised voice during the responsory, often code for "Wake up, Brother Aloysius." It is, in its own way, a test of brotherly love. If I drift off, will you let me face the abbot's questioning alone? Or will you cover for me with an extra loud chorus or an artful cough? Over time, novices develop their own techniques. Some swear by slow blinking or meditative breathing, with eyes open, of course. Others master the subtle art of reciting prayers softly, barely above a whisper, so no one notices if they slip into silence for a beat or two. A few exceptional souls claim to have developed a sixth sense, an internal alarm that jolts them awake at precisely the right moment, just before Amen. And yet, through all these tricks and shared rituals, there's a certain affection in the struggle. Yes, we are expected to be vigilant at prayer, but in these precious, groggy moments, something else takes shape. A secret fellowship of weary souls, bound by the humble quest for a few extra seconds of sleep. Art or science? Maybe it's both, or perhaps just a miracle, witnessed anew each sleepy morning. No. Let me know if you'd like further adjustments or want a specific style or detail honed. Where there's warmth, there are bedbugs. The community bands together for late-night bug squashing, a high-stakes competition of stealth, teamwork, and desperate prayer to St. Gertrude, the unofficial patron of not getting bitten. Pest control in the medieval world was a group endeavour that brought the village, or at least everyone on the same straw tick, together in bouts of solidarity, grumbling, and occasionally innovation. Long before the invention of aerosol sprays or hygienic regulations, people depended on collective vigilance and a few, let's say, creative home remedies. While a visitor today might mourn the lack of clean sheets, The medieval sleeper knew that nothing quite fueled camaraderie like the thrill of catching a bug mid-scamper, or the shared itch of a fresh welt. When evening descended and fires guttered in the hearth, insects became the true lords of the manor. Flickering candlelight revealed legions of crawling, hopping, and buzzing invaders, fleas, lice, and of course, the relentless bedbug. This wasn't just a personal nuisance, it was a communal call to arms. Sleepers watched each other's backs, literally, patting down hair, sleeves, and bedding for tiny trespassers. Many hands make light work took on a very itch-based meaning. Much of pest control was preventive if you were lucky and proactive. Herbal sachets stuffed with pungent rosemary, rue, or wormwood were hung near sleeping areas, their scents a medieval version of bug-off spray. Not that it always worked. The resilient bedbugs often greeted these efforts with what one could only imagine was insectoid smugness, pressing on undaunted. Fumigation, another beloved communal effort, involved stuffing rushes or green herbs into the house, lighting them and flooding the room with choking, aromatic smoke. Was it effective? Sometimes. Was it comfortable? Let's just say that few things bring a group closer than stumbling out of a hut together, gagging on wormwood fumes and high on optimism. Team bug squashing wasn't optional. Plague, after all, had a marketing department in the form of fleas, and lice were the local networking experts, connecting the dots between discomfort, disease, and public embarrassment. Children learned early to scrutinize stitches and seams, fingering their collars and sleeves with the practiced paranoia of seasoned detectives. Even the most devout in the community might be found muttering prayers not just for deliverance from evil, but from the relentless tickle beneath their hairline. Despite the constant struggle, laughter inevitably crept in. Medieval chroniclers rarely wasted ink on the nightly bedbug battles waged in silence, punctuated by yelps and whispered curses. But you can be sure that someone's ill-timed leap from a straw mattress or a failed attempt to outsmart a flea was fodder for the next morning's communal breadline. There were rivalries: who had the worst bites, who could swat the fastest, which household concocted the most outlandish anti-pest ritual. And like any good group project, blame was swapped around generously. It's the neighbours, I'm sure. Their pigs attract them. Despite their united front, success was temporary. Pest control in the medieval world was a cyclical affair. Tonight's victory nearly always undermined by tomorrow's invasion. Still, these rituals fostered a sense of solidarity, a small reminder that for every burden of the era, there was shared discomfort and mutual effort. Your night might be disrupted, but at least you weren't scratching alone. So, the next time you fluff your bug-free pillow, spare a thought for those whose bedtime routine required less counting sheep and more counting bites. In a way, the nightly hunt for bedbugs was a community-building exercise, a peculiar, profoundly itchy expression of togetherness in the candlelit world of medieval pest control. If whispered tales could heat a dorm, you'd never need blankets. Nighttime is prime time for stories. Sometimes scandalous, sometimes wildly inaccurate, always hilariously mundane. Turns out, monks are the original drama queens. There's something about a shared room and a single flickering lamp that transforms every monk into both the confidant and the culprit of rumour. The day's silence is over, the chores are done, and now the only task is keeping secrets, and quickly failing at it. Someone coughs 3 times in the kitchen. By nightfall, it's a sign of spiritual enlightenment. Socks missing from the laundry. A mysterious laundry thief, obviously an agent of chaos, is at work. It isn't just gossip. It's Olympic-level emotional relay racing. After evening prayers, Everyone melts into their preferred patch of floor or mat. That's when someone, always the one least expected, drops the first story. Did you hear Brother Gopal's dream last night? This sets off a ripple of shushing, elbow nudging, and communal rearranging. The art of not being caught by passing elders heightens the camaraderie. Whispered laughter becomes the glue that sticks early friendships together. The dreams retold are their own special genre. Forget heroic visions of enlightenment. No, last night it was about being chased by giant lentils, or arguing with the abbot about which detergent to use. Every retelling renders the story ever more spectacular. Some monks, having discovered this niche, start inventing nightmares just to impress. I dreamt the relics came alive and demanded extra rice, someone whispers, eyes wide. The reactions are a murmur of awestruck amusement and, inevitably, a volley of creative one-upmanship. The emotional currency exchanged isn't just entertainment, though. This is therapy, monastery style. Homesickness. One round of "did you ever notice" stories and it fades for an hour. Worries about exams or memorized chants. Somebody's grandmother once tackled that, or so the stories say, with pickle jars and sheer force of will. Humor turns ordinary anxieties into legendary cautionary tales. And, somehow, everyone feels lighter. Of course, every group has its master storyteller, the monk who knows just how to sprinkle suspense and scandal, the one with the perfectly calibrated gasp at the twist. Then there's always the serious novice who tries to refocus the group. Brothers, perhaps we should meditate instead. But after a few minutes, even the most pious is dragged into recounting some incident with a runaway goat. By the end of the night, the lines between fact and fiction are as tangled as the mats on the floor. Sometimes, confession slips in, almost accidentally. A whispered admission of fear, or a regret from earlier in the day, smuggled in between the laughter, is met with unscripted compassion. Here, gossip is not unkind. It's group processing. The listeners offer advice, told as third-hand stories of monks past, or promise to cover for each other at the morning bell. What starts as juvenile chatter winds up as an improvised support session. On rare occasions, rumors spiral out of control. Suddenly, everyone's on their best behavior because someone said the abbot's nephew is visiting undercover. These moments usually end with a sheepish confession and another story for the repertoire. Remember the time we thought Tenzin was the abbot's nephew? Eventually the lamp dies, the room settles, and one by one, the monks drift to sleep. The stories linger, swirling overhead like invisible incense. Nightmares might visit, but the dorm's collective humour, whetted by gossip and absurdity, keeps monsters at bay. By the time dawn yawns pink over the monastery walls, last night's drama becomes today's running joke. In the monastery, bedtime stories aren't just about passing time. They're about weaving emotional safety nets by trading nightmares, confessions, and, most importantly, the simple reassurance that nobody has to navigate even the weirdest night alone. Someone is convinced the abbey is haunted. Each night, the bravest, almost sleep-deprived monk does a spooky lap, blesses the shadows, and reassures everyone that yes, that noise was just the wind. Again, this self-appointed wraith warden clutches a stubby candle, the flame wavering like his own resolve. He glides purposefully through ancient corridors, eyes darting to every flicker and swirl. There's a hush to his footsteps. Each one sounds far too loud in the silent abbey, outdone only by the occasional mouse daring to scuttle in. The darkness. It is a routine both terrifying and oddly comforting. The old creaking doors, the mysterious draughts, the centuries-old stones radiating damp cold, all lend themselves to the nightly drama. Rumours fuel the ritual. It's said that a silent monk once walked these halls and vanished, leaving only a cold spot by the cloister door and a persistent creak in the floorboards. Other stories mention the reading room poltergeist, supposedly fond of rearranging prayer books and murmuring half-remembered Latin phrases at precisely 3:03 a.m. every Thursday. These tales are shared with widened eyes over weak nighttime tea, each monk adding his own credible eyewitness account. A candle flickered oddly. Someone's sandals went missing. The library globe spun on its own one moonless night. The inspection begins in the chapel, where ancient wooden pews cast long shadows, and every squeak of the floor feels like a spectral warning. The monk methodically waves holy water in the gloomy corners, whispers prayers into the chilly air, and tries not to look too long at the flickering candlelight reflected in a centuries-old reliquary. Sometimes, when the wind rattles the stained glass windows, the monk grips his robes tighter, muttering that ghosts would surely have better things to do than hide behind the altar, though he's not entirely convinced. From there, it's a steady march down the echoing hallway, past the cells, the library, and the refectory, each cavernous with their own mysterious noises. There's a moment of panic when the bell tower's rope sways, the movement explained, as always, by the night breeze. In truth, the wind is rarely responsible for half of what is attributed to it, but it is the most reliable scapegoat, unbothered by accusations of ghostly collaboration. In a bizarre twist of tradition, the inspection is equal parts performance and genuine security check. More than one monk admits to planting harmless pranks, well-timed knocks, hidden shapes under tapestries, a carefully placed mirror flashing candlelight just so. These harmless deceptions keep the ritual lively and maintain the sense of camaraderie, as if scaring each other is a strange form of brotherly love. Once the circuit is complete, the ghost patrol returns to his brethren in the dormitory. There is a theatrical sigh, a dramatic tossing of the cloak, and a declaration, "All clear, nothing but peace tonight." Giggles are stifled beneath blankets, and sometimes, in the flickering half-light, an older monk winks at the nervous novices and recounts, yet again, the tale of the abbey's friendliest ghost, Sister Agatha, who allegedly straightened crooked candlesticks and left the scent of lavender behind. The ritual might seem silly, an elaborate masquerade for grown men cloaked in homespun habits. But there is comfort in routine, in the shared experience of confronting the unknown together, in transforming fear into laughter and community. By the time the candles are snuffed out and the rhythmic breathing of the dormitory sets in, the ghosts, real or imagined, are banished for another night, and outside, just beyond the ancient walls, the wind howls. Or is it merely the sigh of a friendly spirit, relieved to be left alone for another night? You think your heating bill is bad? Try sleeping in a stone hall with only body heat, a handful of straw, and the collective will to not die of frostbite. Snuggling for warmth. Less cuddly, more desperate huddle. There was no setting the thermostat in the medieval world. As the nights grew longer and the wind sliced through the gaps in the wooden doors, every noble hall and peasant cottage transformed into a testing ground for endurance. Forget about hot chocolate by the fire. If you were lucky, that fire was still burning a few coals by midnight. And if you were luckier, you were close enough to feel it. The further you got from the hearth, the colder, and more creatively, people layered themselves in the hope of surviving to morning. Wool became more precious than gold, from coarse tunics to lumpy blankets stuffed with whatever could be scrounged, straw, rags, the occasional unfortunate chicken. Every thread counted. Socks were highly coveted. Yes, socks. The more serious the winter, the more layers you'd see, and the more pungent the hall became. Imagine the scent of 50 unwashed bodies crammed together under one leaky roof, all breathing clouds into the icy air with every sigh and snore. Romantic, only in the sense of shared suffering. But beneath the discomfort was a deeper alliance. Winter was a test of community, a season when survival meant rubbing elbows, knees, and sometimes egos. Social boundaries blurred, at least after dark. Age, status, and even grudges faded in the face of a plunging thermometer. The old crone and the sullen farmhand, the lord and his servant girl, all found themselves tangled up together in an awkward, life-saving heap. Grudges were put on ice, sometimes literally, until spring. Meal times became a highlight, not just for the calories, but for the fleeting illusion of warmth. Stews and porridge took on almost mythical status. These meals didn't just stave off hunger, they gave a psychological boost, rallying everyone around the cookpot in a communal act of hope. Food rationing was common, but so was sharing. A crust of bread traded for a place nearer the fire, a ladle of broth for an extra woolen scrap. Winter was a transactional season in the most primal sense. Of course, nature didn't care about your plans. The cold found its way into everything. Water buckets froze solid. Chamber pots became Arctic hazards. Bedtimes got earlier, not because people were eager for sleep, but because being horizontal and motionless, crushed under collective body weight, was the only way to cheat the night's chill. Even the household pets, cats, dogs, sometimes even goats, became part of this shivering alliance, tucked under blankets and pressed to human sides, everyone contributing a little warmth. But winter wasn't only physical, it got inside your head. Stories grew longer and gloomier by candlelight. Superstitions multiplied. Each draft that rattled the shutters could be a witch's curse. Festivities, when they happened, shone that much brighter. A necessary counterspell against months of gloom and numb toes. The relief when a thaw finally came was almost religious. Rituals of gratitude, feasts of survival, promises, soon to be broken, of better firewood next year. So, next time you grouse about a chilly commute or a weak cup of tea, remember your ancestors. They survived the winter, not with high-tech insulation, but with the sheer stubborn will to unite. Sometimes grumbling, sometimes laughing, always together, against the persistent, patient cold. When everyone leaves for prayers, one monk always hangs back to rearrange the bedding in his favour. It's the daylight savings of monastery life. Gain an inch of blanket, lose an ounce of soul. Matins, the first service of the monastic day, is a test not of devotion, but of self-restraint. The chapel's bells call the brothers, groggy yet obedient, to shuffle from their bunks. In the brief flurry of movement, rustle of habits, clattering of sandals, whispered last-minute prayers, a more subtle choreography unfolds. Eyes glance furtively down the sleeping rows. Who will be the last to rise? The unsleeping opportunist always has an answer. There is an art to it, developed in silence and perfected over many winters. The blankets, thin but precious, have mysterious ways of migrating across cold stone floors. Some nights, an entire blanket seems to evaporate from one bunk and reappear, miraculously doubled up, on another. It's not theft exactly, nor charity undone. It's an ongoing negotiation, a chess game waged nightly with threadbare squares and faded stripes. But the seasoned monk knows the magic hour comes not in the darkness, but at dawn, when the community is elsewhere. The focus on worship provides cover for more worldly calculations. The master tactician lingers, kneeling before his bunk with suspicious fervour. He listens for the echoing footfalls, the chapel door's final creak. When the coast is clear, he strikes. The redistribution ritual is swift but methodical. With all the gravitas of a sacred rite, blankets are pulled taut, modestly tucked, and sometimes, let's admit it, overlapped just so. An inch here, a cunning fold there, until the monk's sleeping space takes on the unmistakable symmetry of quiet victory. No one will ever accuse him of open greed, but when night falls again, others notice their cover just a touch shorter. Coincidence? Or the work of the shadowy blanket adjuster? These are not grand betrayals on the order of holy relics or forbidden luxuries. Yet, in the cloister, where every material possession has a tally and a keeper, small things take on large meanings. Brothers, otherwise vowed to poverty and patience, become connoisseurs of warmth, highly attuned to the shifting climate of communal sleep. An extra inch in February might spell the difference between peaceful rest and a night of shivering meditation. Sometimes the redistribution is generous. The eldest brother, plagued by arthritis, finds his blanket thicker upon returning from prayers. No one claims responsibility, but smiles linger longer over breakfast porridge. More often, though, it is a silent arms race. If one monk is wise to the system, another is wiser. Each morning, the contest resets, strategies adapt, suspicions circulate. As the seasons turn and the chill deepens, stories accumulate. There are whispered legends of a blanket general from fairer years who, with legendary guile, managed to annex enough bedding to fashion a personal cocoon. He was never caught, or rather, everyone knew, and admired him all the same. For in these small acts of monastic subterfuge, the human spirit peeks cheekily through the cracks of regulation. Of course, there are unwritten rules. Take, but do not deprive. Shift, but leave enough. Outsmart, but do not humiliate. Even the most cunning among them knows that fairness, like warmth, must be shared for the order to hold. True harmony is not found in absolute equality, but in the gentle give and take, the mostly invisible corrections that keep the peace. It is said the darkness teaches what the daylight forgets. In the monastery, as in life, we all sleep more soundly when there is a blanket of understanding between us, even if it is a little shorter than we wish. Let me know if you'd like any additional touches or a tweak in style or tone. Trip over someone's sandals in the dark. Fart a little too loudly. There are unwritten, yet universally acknowledged, brotherly rules for tactical apologies and secret shaming. Learn fast or become the running joke by sunrise. Nighttime in a shared room is chaos in slow motion. It's a ritual built not on what's spoken, but on the things you immediately know not to do after a single mistake. Picture this. The lights go out, the air turns heavy with sleep and stealth, and suddenly every sound is magnified. Those who adapt are rewarded. Those who don't provide comedic relief. You'll notice quickly that no one briefs you on how loud a zipper should be at midnight, or exactly how slowly to open a bag of chips so as to avoid the dreaded crinkle echo that haunts the entire room. The rules are osmotic, absorbed through embarrassment and observation. Apologies operate on a different frequency. At midnight, apology etiquette is not about the grandeur of your remorse, but the subtlety. If you bump a bunk, your sorry is whispered, upswept into the darkness. Barely more than a click of the tongue. It's understood. No one wants a lecture at 2 a.m. about personal space. It's a tacit contract. Minimal fuss, minimal drama. Too much noise, too much explanation, and you cross the thin line from humble to heckler. Yet camaraderie grows from these small stumbles. Fumbling in the darkness together, there's unspoken forgiveness for the universal mistakes. The snorer, the restless turner, the guy who can't remember if he packed his charger and has to upend his bag like an amateur burglar. When someone's misfortune exceeds the regular quota, say, A mattress squeaks so heroic it wakes an entire row. A collective reply emerges. First, the pause. Then, the semi-dark chorus of muffled snickers or shushed laughter. This is not cruelty. It's camaraderie coded in eye rolls and inside jokes. Let's talk midnight shaming. The honor code of the night says, what happens in the dark stays in the group chat, in the form of gentle ribbing the next day. The guy who sleep-talked about cheese, the one who accidentally called his dog in his sleep. These stories become shared currency. But here's the fine print. Midnight mistakes are never weaponized. The brotherhood protects what's fragile after lights out. If someone crosses the line from harmless teasing to outright humiliation, that's a major foul. Your role? Participate in the mirth, never the malice. The oldest rule, everyone gets their turn and everyone gets to forget it by breakfast. The cardinal virtue here is anticipation. If you're the last one in, you walk softer, you hush your phone, you pre-loosen your bed sheets so you don't sound like a sail tearing free in the wind. You make a mental note of every obstacle, because at midnight, one misplaced bottle is a landmine of shame. Extra points for the hero who brings a tiny flashlight, or better yet, guides the next guy in with advice whispered like ancient wisdom. Watch the middle bunk, it bites. Respect is measured in decibels and hesitation. Are you considerate enough to hold in that laughter when someone knocks over a water bottle? Can you refrain from turning your phone light on full blast, searching for your socks? Again. These small courtesies are never written down, but they're the stuff of legend. The guy who keeps order is lauded. The guy who breaks it, lovingly mocked. In the end, midnight etiquette is a balancing act between discretion and delight. You'll step on toes, and toes will step on you. But if you learn these rules, apologize quietly, forgive quickly, and share the jokes, by morning, you'll have earned your place in the brotherhood. And if you break the code, at least make it funny. That's the rule everyone remembers most. If breathing loudly were a competition, monks would win gold every season. Each night brings new contenders and, occasionally, a 3-part harmony. Earplugs? Only if you whittle your own from leftover cheese rinds. In the hallowed halls of midnight contemplation, the only thing thicker than the incense is the sound barrier being shattered by Brother Adalbert. His snore, a remarkable hybrid of bagpipes and distant thunder, has been known to shake loose bits of plaster from the 12th century ceiling. Some say the pattern resembles Gregorian chant. Others claim it's merely the Morse code for "send more blankets." Sleep in the monastery is not so much a respite for the body as it is an Olympic event for the senses. Each monk, tucked neatly under woolen blankets in a stone cell, brings his own timbre to this nightly symphony. Brother Stefan, known for his rapid fire staccato, often pairs naturally with Brother Oswald's low, slow bass, earning the pair several unofficial awards for best duet in a supporting role. The abbot, who's managed to master the art of sleeping upright, to better hear God's whispers, he claims, is said to snore in an impressive counterpoint, shifting the ambiance from serene to seismic as the night wears on. Legend has it, the tradition of the great monastic snore-off began quite by accident. One ascetic, determined to outdo his rival's piousness by never sleeping, instead achieved notoriety by perfecting the rare art of the standing nap. The result was what eyewitnesses called the loudest, most ironically restful reverberation to ever echo between cloister walls. Thus, the contest began, not for who could remain silent in prayer, but who could raise the most uproarious racket in the peace of night. Of course, this has become a source of great speculation among the townspeople. Unfamiliar with the nightly din, Generations of villagers have invented elaborate stories to explain the early morning rumblings that roll down from the monastery. Earthquakes, dragons, a secret order of nocturnal monks practicing competitive wood-chopping. None have guessed the truth. A spiritual arms race of inhalation and exhalation, louder and prouder than all the larks at dawn. Outside observers, the rare guest, desperate for a spiritual retreat, are often left shell-shocked, mistaking the experience for some arcane test of faith. "I expected enlightenment," confessed one supplicant in the guestbook. "But I learned the true sound of devotion, and it is somewhere between a walrus and a medieval blacksmith losing an argument with an anvil." The monks themselves, of course, approach the whole affair with their characteristic stoicism. "Everyone has a cross to bear," says Brother Urbanus, wrapping another scarf around his ears before lying down. Some opt for inventive solutions, tightly braided wool pulled over noses, unorthodox breathing techniques, or the strategic placement of onions near the pillow, supposedly discourages snoring, allegedly just makes everyone hungry at 2 a.m. Junior monks, the novitiates, are often seen begging for tips, having learned too late that the tranquility of communal living does not extend to bedtime. But perhaps this is the truest measure of monastic brotherhood, embracing the noise, letting it wash over you like a Gregorian lullaby gone or slightly rogue. It's part of the rhythm of monastery life, punctuating the silence of the day with the exuberant music of nighttime respiration. In the end, even the worst offenders are forgiven. After all, in a place dedicated to peace and communal living, it's only fair that every brother gets a chance to be heard, even if it is through his nose. And so, the nightly great monastic snore-off continues, echoing through stone and legend alike. If sleep is a journey, then here, it is undeniably one best undertaken with a sense of humour and a very large pillow. Someone always drifts through the dawn with eyes open, mumbling "Amen" at the wall. The rule: no questions, no laughter, until breakfast, when the whole event gets reenacted, badly, in pantomime. It's a ritual like any other. A room full of people fiercely trying not to notice the peculiar parade that unfolds somewhere between 2 and 4 in the morning. The first-timers, of course, fail miserably. They stare, they stifle giggles, they whisper, "Did you see that? Is she awake?" The veterans, though, merely roll over, an unspoken pact that what's seen at night dissolves by sunrise. There's an illusion of dignity to uphold, after all. Even when you find your roommate earnestly blessing their pillow or cursing a lamp for failing its geometry quiz. And yet, the strangeness of these midnight rituals somehow stitches everyone closer together. It's a gentle kind of conspiracy, group amnesia, until, inevitably, someone cracks a smile over oatmeal and the whole table erupts. The night's episode gets reenacted, complete with overly dramatic miming and exaggerated whispers. No one ever gets the details quite right, but that's not really the point. The real performance is in the retelling, the shared knowledge that some part of each of you belongs to the night, a version of yourself, unconcerned with logic or shame. For some, sleepwalking is a studied march. For others, it's a confused shuffle, like an actor finding their mark in a dream of a badly lit stage. The dorm itself becomes a set, squeaky floors, drafty corridors, shadows carved by the dim red exit signs. One resident, infamously, managed to navigate the entire hallway without once opening her eyes, trailing her fingertips along the cinder block like a pianist testing out invisible keys. She never remembered a thing, but everyone else did. Within days, the legend had grown. She'd recited the preamble to the Constitution in perfect Latin, danced a wobbly waltz with a vacuum, spoken in a voice not quite her own. Sleep-talking, meanwhile, carries its own myth-making. Voices rise in the hush, urgent or hilariously mundane. Pass me the stapler. Tell the squirrels I'm not interested. Sometimes there's a cryptic poetry to it. Lines half-remembered by morning. Entire dorm rooms become private theatres of the absurd, their inhabitants cast as both audience and participant. There's a kind of freedom in it, a chance to say things you'd never utter while awake, a rebellion against the tight scripts of daytime. Of course, the next morning, a code of silence reigns. Bleary-eyed sleepwalkers blink into the light, pretending nothing happened. Sleep talkers claim amnesia. No one pushes. The unspoken etiquette protect the secret selves that wander the halls at night. Everyone's entitled to an occasional episode, a reprieve from control, from keeping it together, from being the person everyone expects. It's a small mercy, the way sleep grants permission to unravel. Years later, these stories will linger, half true and heavily edited. Remember when you summoned the ghost in the laundry room? When you challenged the vending machine to a duel? The memories get glossier with each telling. Maybe that's the real art, not in pretending nothing happened, but in agreeing to believe whatever version of the night feels right. The laughter in the retelling isn't cruel. It's a kind of tribute, a way of saying, we saw you at your strangest, your sleepiest, and we're still here. In the end, every dorm holds its share of sleepwalkers and secret tellers. Every group invents its own ways to look away, then look back, to turn each surreal night into another reason to belong. The rule stands: no questions, no laughter, until morning. But by then, it's all too funny, too strange, too human not to share. Before alarm clocks, there was Brother Cuthbert and his appetite for chaos, ringing the bell just a little too early every morning just to see who'd snap. You try to look holy, but your inside voice is very much not. There's an unspoken choreography to these early hours, the night's hush broken by a single, excruciating clang, a communal inhale, regretful and groggy, followed by the clatter of sandals on flagstone like a herd of reluctant sheep. The dormitory becomes a sluggish river of brown wool and scowls. Everyone denies it later, but each morning, as the bell tolls and rips you from dreams of warm stew and slightly less damp socks, a slow-motion domino of sighs and subtle groans rolls across the room. This is the true call and response of the order. It's supposed to be a sacred moment, the ringing of the bell, the gathering for matins, the collective rising to greet the day with praise and discipline. But in reality, blessed are the bleary-eyed. Brother Gerald's hair sticks straight up, a riotous halo of chaos. Brother Simon has yet to master the art of tying his rope belt straight after 3 hours of sleep. You shuffle out with the rest, doing your best impression of a penitent soul instead of a mutinous insomniac. At the centre is Brother Cuthbert, herding the brethren with a zeal bordering on mischief. He stands by the door, lips twitching in flawless, faux solemnity, offering not quite eye contact as each of you files past. His particular gift is delivering the morning's summons while maintaining just enough plausible deniability to claim he did nothing wrong. Sometimes, you wonder if Cuthbert was born like this, or if years spent wielding the morning bell eventually warps the soul. His belfry is his kingdom, and the rest of you are merely sleep-deprived subjects. The groan of the collective is, of course, forbidden. The rule strictly prescribes silence, especially in the mornings. Words are reserved for the divine, not for registering dissent this side of dawn. But rebellion always finds a loophole. The shuffle of feet, the long, suffering throat clearings, the pointed coughs, a whole lexicon built out of exasperation. It's both an art form and a form of mutual reassurance. Each grunt says, "I'm with you. We're in this together." We may all be called to sainthood, but not before our first cup of barley water. Of course, there are the early risers, the ones who somehow appear at matins luminous, already half in heaven. They kneel a little straighter, chant a little brighter, their faces irritatingly serene as if they'd spent the last hour in rapturous contemplation, rather than drooling into their sleeves. You watch them from the back pew, both envious and slightly suspicious. Are they saints, or just better at pretending? But mostly, there's comfort in the ritual repetition. The bell, the groan, the shuffle. You know exactly where you'll stand, whose blanket will trip you, which cold patch of floor your knees will find during the prayers. In this pre-dawn haze, the small mysteries of the day, the weather, the mood in the refectory, the chance of good bread, seem distant and trivial. For now it's just you, the bell, and that almost audible question: how holy can anyone be at this hour? The bell's final echo fades, and you take your place among the tired faithful. Maybe, just maybe, tomorrow Brother Cuthbert will forget to ring the bell. Don't bet on it. For as much as you all groan, it wouldn't be morning without that terrible, wonderful summons, and the knowledge that, for another day, none of you has to face it alone. Rolling over at night is a move filled with peril. Risk waking someone. Risk ending foot to face. Risk never reclaiming your precious spot of straw. Strategic positioning is, perhaps, holier than prayer. In the dim hush of night, where breaths deepen and shadows stretch, the straw mat becomes a chessboard, your body a pawn waiting to move, not toward victory, but toward simple comfort. Imagine it. You've achieved that rare alignment where shoulder, hip, and knee cooperate in truce, their grievances with the ground momentarily eased. Then the urge. A pebble gnaws at your rib. An itch blooms mid-spine. The pressure builds, a silent torment, until shifting becomes less a choice, and more an inevitability. You weigh the consequences like a general at the brink of battle. One wrong move, and you'll unleash chaos. Breathless sighs from the left, a grunt from the right, a cascade of muttered curses behind. Worse, you might stir the lightest sleeper, an infraction not soon forgotten. In a communal sleep situation, the politics of nocturnal movement are fierce. Each shuffling body threatens the fragile peace woven out of necessity, fatigue, and silent agreement. Consider too the sacredness of territory. On the straw mats, territory is a precious commodity, fiercely protected but easily lost in the shuffle. Once you uproot yourself, the clock starts ticking. You have mere moments to reclaim your warmth before it dissipates into the night air, replaced by another's foot, knee, or, on the worst nights, a cold draft and regret. The art is in the timing. Roll too soon, and you endure the chill. Too late, and your temporary comfort is outweighed by the crowd's collective displeasure. Every seasoned sleeper on the mat knows this truth. To roll is to risk. Yet, a well-executed shift is also a mark of wisdom. The experienced master the maneuver with grace, a slow tilt here, a subtle knee tuck there, a sequence memorized through countless nights of trial and error. Their secret? It's not brute force or speed, but anticipation. They listen first. Is everyone in deep sleep or hovering in that fragile state where the smallest sigh could set off a chain reaction of rearranged limbs? Some take it further, developing tactical alliances with their neighbours. A nudge in the darkness, the briefest conspiratorial glance before lights out, and the promise of mutual aid. I'll shift if you shield. Bonds are forged and tested nightly, broken as easily as they are made, all in service of individual comfort. In these makeshift societies, forgiveness is reserved for the adept, irritation for the clumsy. However, regret is the ever-looming spectre. Sometimes the role isn't worth the risk. You flip, jostle, and disaster. The toe of your bunkmate finds its way under your ribs, or you discover yourself halfway off the mat, cold creeping up your spine. The spot you gave up is gone for good. Now you lie wide-eyed, haunted by your own restlessness, wishing you'd endured the pebble a little longer. This is the sacred shift, a nightly ritual that marries muscle memory and social awareness, necessity and prudence. It's a dance with unwritten rules, enforced not by any authority, but by the mutual understanding that a restful night is a privilege, never a guarantee. So when the whisper comes, that internal urge to shift, pause, run through the calculus. Who sleeps beside me? How deep is their sleep? Can I bear this discomfort for another hour, or is it, the straw mat gods forbid, my turn to risk it all? Sometimes you roll, daring fortune and forgiveness. Other nights you remain still, resigned to discomfort, but secure in your hard-won tract of nighttime real estate. Because in the end, on these crowded mats, survival isn't about finding sleep. It's about keeping what you found and knowing exactly when and if to or roll over. With only 3 pillows for a whole dorm, there are nightly accusations, pillow thefts, and the monkish equivalent of trash talk, meaning lots of psalms recited at pointed volume. The scene most evenings resembles less a sanctuary and more a medieval game of hide and seek, as monks shuffle quietly at dusk, eyes scanning for telltale lumps beneath robes or suspiciously fluffed bedding. Any novice unlucky enough to have pillowless quarters becomes oddly resourceful. Folded robes, bundled straw mats, or even, on one desperate occasion, the entire psalter employed as a makeshift cushion. This inflames tensions even further. After all, what is a holy brother to do when he suspects an act of larceny, but has no proof except the unusually cheerful comfort of another's nightly repose? Accusations inevitably come shrouded in pious language. An older brother, not naming names, might offer a reading from Psalm 4. In peace, I will both lie down and sleep. With subtle glances toward Brother Martin's suspiciously puffy silhouette. Martin, in turn, might respond dramatically with Psalm 91's promise that the Lord himself is my refuge and my fortress, which to the listening brethren sounds a great deal like someone defending their ill-gotten pillow fort. Pillow justice in the monastery isn't swift, though it is inventive. Once, the abbot, catching wind of the mounting disquiet, decided to hold a pillow chapter. The entire dorm assembled after Compline, each brother clutching the thin possessions he claimed as his own. The abbot, sternly, yet with twinkling eyes, pronounced, "Let whoever is without sin cast the first feather." There followed an awkward silence, quickly interrupted by giggling from the novices and stifled coughs from the elders. Because outright accusation might cause lasting schism, brother against brother over bedding, the community prefers to resolve pillow disputes with creative compromise. On one famous occasion, a panel of impartial monks was selected to redistribute pillows according to perceived need, spiritual merit, and, unofficially, seniority in the snoring hierarchy. This led to a week where the loudest sleeper, Brother Ambrose, nickname the Thunderer, was lavishly cushioned, for fear that without plush protection, no one would sleep at all. Yet beneath the nightly skirmishes and psalmic salvos lies something more fundamental, an unspoken agreement that the frayed pillows and thin blankets are, like the routine itself, a test of patience, of creativity, and above all, of charity. The best stories and greatest laughter are always sparked by these domestic trials. Brother Philip hiding a pillow inside the bell tower rope, only to have it tumble down at Vespers. Brother John anonymously gifting his pillow to an ailing novice, thus prompting a round of hushed awe and wild speculation. And so, the saga of the 3 pillows continues through the seasons, becoming legend. New arrivals hear the tales and imagine a lawless wilderness, only to discover that the real battles are fought quietly, with wit, song, and sacred irony. Occasionally, when all monks seem to be sleeping soundly and no outcries heard, a sense of uneasy peace settles over the dorm. It won't last, of course. By midnight, the ancient dance resumes, a muffled rustle, a stifled yawn, and once again, the monastic night rings with the holy justice of softly spoken psalms. In the monastery, even a shortage of pillows becomes grounds not only for rivalry, but for the gentle art of living together, learning patience, forgiveness, and, perhaps most of all, the power of a well-timed psalm. Let me know if you need tweaks, or would like footnotes, references to your transcript's stylistic elements. Insomnia is a timeless plague, and the monks have prayers for that too. Chanting psalms in the dead of night, you join the holy tradition of wondering if anyone actually slept before coffee was invented. If you've ever watched the subtle outline of your ceiling slowly etch itself into focus at 3 a.m., you're already halfway to monastic canonization. Monasteries, especially in the Middle Ages, had their vigils, scheduled hours of wakefulness marinated in dim candlelight and echoing psalms. For monks, insomnia wasn't so much a curse as a calling. Rather than rage against the dying of the sleep, monks embraced the night, flipping their biological clocks to God's time zone, and they believed there was spiritual opportunity in those eyes wide open hours. You may not have chosen these wakeful nights, but by finding a prayer or a blessing to guide you through, you can stake a holy claim on your 2 a.m. existential crises, just as the monks did. The monastic tradition offers an entire menu of blessings, mostly designed not to bribe the Sandman, but to make peace with his absence. Countless ancient texts, think the Rule of St. Benedict, the Book of Hours, or the Psalter, outline prayers specially tailored for times of restless watchfulness. Some medieval monks even kept lists of the best psalms to chant if sleep wouldn't come, and these weren't short recitations. Imagine reciting Psalm 119, 176 verses, just so your eyes might finally agree to close. A spiritual lullaby with a Herculean word count. Nowadays, you might fumble for a podcast instead of a prayer when insomnia strikes, but perhaps the old monks were onto something. Their prayers don't guarantee a swift descent into dreamland, but they do offer companionship for those long, silent hours. There's something beautiful in the shared acknowledgement, across centuries and across continents, that sometimes, for reasons medical or mystical, we just don't sleep. And instead of treating these hours as lost, monastic tradition frames them as opportunities for reflection, gratitude, or just plain survival. So if you find yourself scrolling through bleak, late-night memes, or painstakingly calculating just how little sleep you'll get before your alarm snarls, remember, you're not the only one. In the flickering shadows of 1,000 cloisters before you, monks paced softly, whispering, Te lucis ante terminum, the classic prayer, to thee, before the close of day. Their prayers might start with praise, then wander through admissions of worry or fear, only to end in that universal petition. Please, just a little peace, just a little rest. If nothing else, these prayers recognize that insomnia is not just a quirk of the modern mind, but a thread that sews together anxious souls all the way back to ancient abbeys. Here's the real trick. Monastic insomnia prayers do not shame or chastise sleeplessness. There's a gentle wisdom to them that you might hold on to tonight. Instead of issuing commands, "Thou must sleep now," they invite you. Linger with your thoughts. Pray for those who can't sleep, for the sick, the worried, the lonely, all who share your wakeful vigil. Suddenly, your insomnia pivots from a solitary annoyance to a common ground. The night becomes less a battleground and more a gathering place for slow, sacred wakefulness. Practicality still counts. Yes, monks might suggest candlelight and chant, but the heart of the blessing is this: whatever keeps you awake, bring it into the conversation with the divine. Offer your restless heart, your racing mind, your tangled sheets. If your prayers run out, borrow a phrase from those old monks. Watch with me, O light eternal, till the day dawns. If nothing else, there's a certain kinship in knowing that centuries before, insomnia was a hashtag. It was a nightly prayer request. So tonight, if you can't sleep, remember you have official permission to bless the insomnia. Talk to the darkness and claim your place in this ancient community of midnight petitioners. If all else fails, remember, you can always start reciting Psalm 119, and you might just be asleep before you reach verse 50. Dawn finally seeps in. Monks groan and stretch, regretting every decision made between midnight and matins. Breakfast is cold porridge and the hope of redemption, or at least a nap after chores. There is a certain cruel clarity to medieval morning light. It leaks through cracked shutters and casts a harsh, new truth on the narrow dormitory. Brother Cuthbert is still snoring, Brother Thomas's feet still smell, and your own neck is locked at a right angle thanks to a pillow made from something possibly harder than penance itself. The first sound isn't birdsong, but the low collective groan of grown men realizing they must live another day without lumbar support. Morning brings a reckoning. This is not just physical. Every ache and crick is a spiritual hangover from the liturgical gymnastics of the night before. Discipleship, you discover, can be measured by patience and how well one can fold a threadbare blanket with numb fingers. The air is thick with regret, incense, and the faint, lingering aroma of communal socks. The monks shuffle toward breakfast, an event less anticipated for flavour than for the promise of momentary stillness. The porridge is cold, the bread fresher in memory than on the table, but no one complains. Complaining, after all, is a luxury you don't rehearse when your day started with prayers at 3 a.m. Instead, each monk sits in stoic silence, spooning repentance into their mouth one lumpy bite at a time. The abbot, his face equal parts serenity and crumpled bedsheet, offers a spiritual reading none are quite awake enough to understand. A monologue drifting over the audience of sleep-deprived saints and sinners. By now, any hope for a cozy morning routine is dashed. No warm slippers, no waiting coffee, no gentle playlist. Only relentless chores and the knowledge that naps are rare, brief, and entirely conditional. You sweep, you haul water, you tidy the same hallways where you dreamed, briefly and badly, of escape only hours before. Small mercies become sacred. The warmth of sun hitting the stones, the shared grimace with a fellow sufferer as you scrub another ancient bench, the half-remembered comfort of a decent stretch before Lord's. Yet, in the bleary monotony lies a sort of dusty holiness. Sleep deprivation becomes a weird, communal form of wisdom. No one is at their best, which means everyone is offered the grace of lowered expectations. You see kindness in a monk passing you the less mouldy loaf. you receive a rare, silent thanks when you find a missing sandal. Bonds are forged not through grand gestures, but through the soft camaraderie of surviving another sunrise together. And occasionally, there is humour. Someone stifles a yawn and sneezes mid-psalm, sending a ripple of suppressed giggles down the pew. No one scolds. In a life divinely ordered and predictably uncomfortable, laughing at the absurdity is practically a sacrament. The spiritual hangover, equal parts exhaustion, humility, and the distant hope for a do-over tomorrow, turns every blemish of monastic living into a badge of honour. So tonight, as you drift off in your slightly too warm, definitely just for you bed, raise a quiet, grateful prayer for the medieval monks, survivors of the original adult sleepover, where sleeping alone was a sign of exile, waking up refreshed was considered heresy, and all-night obedience included blanket rebukes and spiritual footsie. They endured the sacred snore, opera, itchy bedding, and cold stone floors in search of enlightenment, or at least an extra pillow. Let the absurd resilience of these brothers remind you that comfort is a recent miracle. Be thankful for memory foam, white noise machines, private bathrooms, and a 0% chance of having your blanket swiped by a man named Brother Hubert tonight. Because history is uncomfortable, hilarious, and proof that humanity will always find a way, usually right in the middle of the night, half asleep, and wrapped in a monk's stolen blanket. Sleep well, and may your dreams be far less communal than theirs. So tonight, as you drift off in your slightly too warm, definitely just for you bed, raise a quiet, grateful prayer for the medieval monks, survivors of the original adult sleepover, where sleeping alone was a sign of exile, waking up refreshed was considered heresy, and all-night obedience included blanket rebukes and spiritual footsie. They endured the sacred snore opera, itchy bedding, and cold stone floors in search of enlightenment, or at least an extra pillow. Let the absurd resilience of these brothers remind you that comfort is a recent miracle. Be thankful for memory foam, white noise machines, private bathrooms, and a 0% chance of having your blanket swiped by a man named Brother Hubert tonight. Because history is uncomfortable, hilarious, and proof that humanity will always find a way, usually right in the middle of the night, half asleep, and wrapped in a monk's stolen blanket. Sleep well, and may your dreams be far less communal than theirs.